Welcome back, everyone, to another Loki episode breakdown. So I have to apologize because I didn't get this video out a while ago. I tried to get this video out on maybe Saturday, but I kind of failed at that because so I took my vaccine on Wednesday when this episode came out, but I didn't get to actually do it. I didn't, but the effects of the vaccine were still coming on me. So, because I was like tired for the next like 2 days. So on Wednesday I had issues, like Thursday I had issues. I just couldn't get up and actually work on it. So, but yeah, but now I have this video ready, and I hope to get this out by later on today, if not tomorrow. But I will get this out before the episode 2 comes out. Before episode 2 comes out. But anyway, let's just get started. By the way, spoiler alert, even though this video is coming out late, still watch the episode before you get that. Just make sure you watched it, because this episode has some big, like, reveals. It is the first one, but still, though, so yeah. So the title of this episode is called Glorious Purpose. Now, as you can see, obviously it says resume because I already watched it, but yeah. So Glorious Purpose is supposed to be the line that Loki says in The Avengers, which is the movie that Loki kind of exits this timeline. The Avengers is where the Avengers they all came together and they defeated the villain Loki. But in this timeline, Loki escaped through that timeline because he picked up the Tesseract when in Avengers Endgame Tony Stark and Ant-Man tried to steal the Tesseract from that timeline. Loki escaped with it, so now he's home free. Well, at least he thought, because then after that he ends up getting captured by the TVA, or the Time Variance Authority. But yeah, but I'll explain who they are in a minute too. So yeah, so what ends up happening is he always says, "I am Loki of Asgard, and I'm burdened with glorious purpose." This is what he says to the Mongols when he's confronted by them, because as soon as he picks up the Tesseract, he lands in their home. He lands legit in their home. So yeah. Anyway, I'll just show you that.
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
So yeah, the Mongols they actually try to talk to him, but they kind of fail because what ends up happening is there's a huge language barrier. Now in the comics, Thor has this ability that I don't think he has in the MCU. He might have it in the MCU, but I'm not sure though. It's this ability called the All Tongue, where he has the ability to just communicate with anybody around the universe, like no matter what language they speak. This is his ability in the comics. I don't know if he has it in the MCU, but for example, he might have it in the MCU because, for example, whenever he talks with people like Groot, he seems to be able to understand him pretty easily. So, or it actually could just be the all tongue at its work. But yeah, because like I don't really know. Loki might have that ability too, but because he is related to Thor, he's Thor's brother. But I'm not sure though if he has it. Probably not though. But yeah, but he doesn't seem to understand anything of what the Mongols are saying. So probably that's not like that's unfortunate. So yeah, so the title of the Marvel Studios line is always changes between every single Marvel property or TV show or movie, whatever. It always changes, and in this part in Loki, it changes to green, black, and like maybe a light sense of silver and gold, I guess maybe, because that is supposed to be the main colors of Loki's outfit. He wears this green and black and kind of gold a lot on it because he says it is fine as guardian leather. But yeah, and then now WandaVision, it changes in WandaVision, which was the first Marvel property that came out ever since COVID hit. Um, the first one that came out, but yeah, so this one is supposed to be it's Marvel, and it's supposed to be gray to match the sitcom era because it had a lot to do with sitcoms back then. But yeah, then in Falcon and Winter Soldier, it was red with a little bit of blue in there. I think the main theme of that was supposed to be to symbolize the colors of America. Even though there's no white, they have silver, which is pretty close to white. So yeah, they were trying to match the American theme because obviously it's about Captain America. So yeah, then in Shang-Chi, it just turns bright red with actual like white and a little bit of silver maybe. But yeah, and then in the Eternals, it changes a little bit of gold, and there's like black with the Marvel line. But yeah, and then it changes to Studios, which also has in gold, and then there's black in the background. But yeah, so anyway, so Loki wakes up in the Gobi Desert of Mongolia. If you don't know where that is, that's in Central Asia. It's in China, northern China, and it's in like south of Mongolia, because Mongolia is a big country, but it's like but it's in between like two larger countries, Russia and China. It's also bordered by Kazakhstan in the east. So yeah, yeah, actually no, in the west, but yeah. So anyway, so he wakes up by their village, which, as you can see right over here, he wakes up right here and he's confronted by them. So he runs up to this little ledge and he basically gives out his big line right here that I just showed you earlier, but I'll repeat it again because it's funny.
I am Loki of Asgard, and I am burdened with glorious purpose.
So basically, what ends up happening as soon as he tries to talk to them, the timekeepers they show up, and he immediately his attention diverts from the Mongols all the way to the TVA because they are kind of big as a threat to him because they're about to grab the Tesseract, and to him it's very powerful. So yeah. But Loki discovers in this episode that the Infinity Stones are not the most powerful thing in the universe, which I'll explain later. So yeah. So Loki says step away from that, and then he basically gets into a giant fight as a not a giant fight, but like it gets kind of confrontational.
Don't touch that.
Appears to be a standard sequence violation. Branch is growing at a stable rate of slope.
If you don't know who this character is, this is B-15. She is one of the more main characters of this. Now, these soldiers in the background, they're part of an organization called the Time Variance Authority. I'll explain who they are in a minute. Loki doesn't understand who they are either. So, Loki doesn't really understand who these people are either. But if you don't know, these soldiers they're called Minutemen, and their leader is supposed to be a hunter, and this hunter's name is Hunter B-15. They have these stun batons that have like time abilities. So for example, what she ends up doing later to Loki as Loki tries to steal the Tesseract from them, tries to reason with them, he gets a little angry and he says, "Now get out of my way," mostly. So yeah, but the Time Variance Authority they try to arrest him for crimes against the sacred timeline.
Variant identified.
I beg your pardon.
Loki's confused as heck.
Variance Authority, I hereby arrest you for crimes against the sacred timeline. Hands up. You're coming with us.
I'm sorry. Who's us?
Last chance, Variant.
It's been a very long day, and I think I've had my fill of idiots in armored suits telling me what to do. So, if you don't mind, this is actually your last chance. Now get out of my way.
So he tries to. So yeah. So basically, they're trying to arrest him for crimes against the sacred timeline, which Loki has no understanding of this, because if you rewatch Endgame, then you can tell that in that scene where Loki escapes from the timeline where the Avengers they kind of mess up and stuff. What ends up happening is he causes them to. Basically, what ends up happening is Loki's confused as heck when he sees Ant-Man kicking the Tesseract around in that little briefcase in Tony Stark's hands. But yeah, anyway. So what ends up happening is Hunter B-15, I'm just gonna call her that, she smacks Loki with the baton. Now, as I said earlier, these batons they have rules with time. So as she smacks him, she uses that and she smacks him at about 1/16th of the speed. So that's like such a long time. It's not even one half the speed. It's not 1/4 of the speed. It's not 1/8 of the speed. It's 1/16th, which is kind of ridiculous. But I don't even know how to. So basically, he's knocked out back in very slow motion, and he gets arrested pretty easily, and then he's taken to the time cops. But before they leave, they basically one of the Minutemen leaves this little device thing, which is used to like reset the timeline so everything is not like mixed up again. So you can imagine every single person who has tried to cheat their way through the universe through time and stuff has failed to get through this. So yeah, so they have to use that to reset this. So that means, for example, the Mongolians, who are probably confused as heck of what's going on with this, their memories are probably going to get wiped from like the next like few minutes and stuff, because they don't understand anything that's going on, and the time variance story has nothing to do with them. So yeah, they don't get anything. So obviously their mind is about to be reset, and the timeline is going to be reset from there on out. So then everything, the timeline will be fixed. So then Loki is brought to the Time Variance Authority. Now, this is supposed to be like their base or their headquarters or their HQ, but basically the Time Variance Authority are people who exist outside of time. These things, they exist outside of time, which means Infinity Stones are practically useless in here, because Infinity Stones are only useful if you're inside your own universe. So that's why like over the last 10 years of Marvel, Infinity Stones have been useful as heck, because nobody has been jumping from universe to universe. They've only been jumping from like planet to planet, from place to place. But it's not that easy. But technically the Time Variance Authority exists outside of space and time. So Infinity Stones are practically useless here, and I'm gonna prove it later. So anyway, he's brought to them, and he has to go through this giant security check, and he has to meet up at this desk where B-15 is supposed to check him in. So he tries to run off, but then he ends up getting. But they also have this other device where, if you notice on his collar right here, Hunter B-15 has this device where if she presses it, it will reset whatever Loki did, pretty much, and it ends up backfiring on her later, because later Loki uses that on her, which is really sinister. But yeah. So anyway, so yeah, he tries to escape, but he fails and stuff. But yeah, and then so he ends up getting checked in, because all these other prisoners are being checked in. But yeah, then Loki has to go through this giant security check in an elevator where he's forced to take off his clothes. But what ends up happening is Loki tells the droid.
Absolutely not. This is fine and Guardian leather.
So he tells him that it's fine as Guardian leather, but it literally does nothing, because the machine literally takes it off anyway, really easily, and then it sends him through another security check where apparently he has clothes on as soon as he jumps on, and then he's confronted by this dude. He's confronted by this dude who apparently works there.
We signed to verify this is everything you've ever said. What? Sign this too. Oh, this is absurd.
So this is kind of dumb, but I don't really get this. I bet it was just mostly meant for like comedic purposes, but yeah. So anyway, so then he's dropped through yet another elevator. That's already 3 elevators, and he has to go through this check where he has to walk through the security like. It's kind of similar where if you're at an airport, you have to walk through this thing to make sure like you have no metal on you or something like that, because of obviously like security reasons. So when they have Loki walk through here, what ends up happening then is he has to walk through here to make sure that he's not a robot, and if he is a robot, it's immediately going to disintegrate him. So for a second, he gets really, really scared, because he actually has doubts saying that I am a robot. So yeah, he actually thinks he might be a robot. So yeah.
Do a lot of people not know if they're robots? Thank you for your confirmation. Please move through.
So he does pass the test, but he is given something called a temporal aurora. He's given something called a temporal aurora, which I have no idea what that is, and neither does Loki. So yeah. So anyway, then there's this ad by this person named Miss Minutes, where I don't really know, but I'll just try explaining it. But yeah.
What if I was a robot?
Pencils, and check this out. Long ago, there was a vast multiversal war. Countless unique timelines battled each other for supremacy.
nearly resulting in the total destruction of, well, everything. But then the all-knowing timekeepers emerged, bringing peace by reorganizing the multiverse into a single timeline, the sacred timeline. Now, the timekeepers protect and preserve the proper flow of time for everyone and everything. But sometimes people like you veer off the path the timekeepers created. We call those variants. Maybe you started an uprising, or were just late for work. Whatever it was, stepping off your path created a nexus event, which left unchecked could branch off into madness.
Okay, so if you don't know what a nexus is, I don't know if you might remember though, in WandaVision episode 7, there was the WandaVision ad where it was talking about the Nexus pill. Nexus, now that was meant to be a reference to Scarlet Witch as a Nexus being. Nexus beings are basically beings who don't have variants at all. But yeah, pretty much. So Wanda would have been able. But yeah, that's just different though. So I'll continue.
Leading to another multiversal war. But don't worry, to make sure that doesn't happen, the timekeepers created the TVA and all its incredible workers. The TVA has stepped in to fix your mistake and set time back on its predetermined path. Now that your actions have left you without a place on the timeline, you must stand trial for your offenses. So sit tight and we'll get you in front of a judge in no time. Just make sure you have your ticket and you'll be seen by the next available attendant. For all time. Always!
Now, what's really funny about this is she makes it sound like going on trial is a fun thing, but it's actually not. So then Loki has to go through another security check where he has to get his ticket in order to go on trial. This dude is acting a little too cocky, and what ends up happening is he ends up getting disintegrated by one of the Minutemen. So yeah, so she explains how there was the timekeepers the timekeepers created the timeline, the sacred timeline, and basically they're here to fix her mistakes because of what Loki did. But yeah. So anyway, by the way, there's also this title card in the middle of the episode. But yeah. So then it just shows Loki, but every time it shows a different variant, which I think it's supposed to like mention all the different versions of Loki throughout like the comics and stuff like that, which I will talk a little bit more about at the end of the video. So yeah. So anyway, so then in 1549 we meet the character Mobius M. Mobius, who's played by Owen Wilson. You might have recognized him from somewhere before. So yeah. But anyway, so in 1549 there is a crime done by someone, a variant, and basically what ends up happening is there's a person who's killing a bunch of Minutemen, and what is really brutal is that this one's happening inside a church. So, God. Anyway, so then this little girl, Mobius tries to interrogate this little girl because she seems to be the only one who happened, and the only thing she does is she points toward the devil, which is doesn't really make much sense. But yeah. So anyway, and this is in France, so obviously, so yeah. Now what ends up happening is one of the TVA agents comes through and he gives Mobius this sheet where it has all the information on Loki. So let's just get this. And it says apprehended, I think. But yeah. So it says variant L1130. It says the race says front something, height 6'2", eye color blue, sex fluid, birthplace Jotunheim, I think. Yeah, that's what it's called. Because in the Thor movie, remember, Loki's not Asgardian. He says he's of Asgard, but he's not actually Asgardian. He's actually part of the Jotunheim because he was adopted by Odin during the first Thor movie. But yeah. And then Elias, Loki, God of Mischief, blah, 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 and all that other stuff. So yeah. Mostly, but yeah. So it says he's approved, and this picture is probably like a mugshot of what he took. But yeah, it looks similar to a mugshot. So yeah, basically it looks like Loki's in jail. So yeah. So then Loki is brought to trial by Hunter B-15. Mobius shows up at his trial as well. But yeah. So yeah, Mobius does show up at his trial. But yeah. So Loki is brought to the judge of this person. Her name is Ravonna, I think. Now, what's funny is that in the comics, Ravonna is supposed to be the first love interest of Kang the Conqueror, Now, King the Conqueror is going to be played by he's gonna be in the movie Ant-Man 3 when that comes out, so there might be some connection. Also, King the Conqueror is a huge time traveling villain. He's actually a lot worse than Loki, so like Loki's probably worse than that. Also, the face behind Ravana looks really similar to King the Conqueror, even though it's probably meant to resemble the Timekeepers or those little lizards that Loki calls them. So yeah, then he's brought to trials. I'm just gonna play it like I did earlier. So yeah.
Variant L1130, aka Loki Laufeyson, is charged with sequence violation 72089. How do you plead?
So yeah, by the way, they call him Laufeyson because Loki is the son of the king of Jotunheim named Laufeyson. So yeah, obviously he's supposed to be an ice giant. So Loki's not actually Asgardian, but Odin used magic to make his skin look like he's Asgardian. But in reality, he's actually not. So yeah.
Madam, a god doesn't bleed. Look, this has been a very enjoyable pantomime, but I'd like to go home now.
Are you guilty or not guilty, sir?
Guilty of being the god of mischief, yes. Guilty of finding all this incredibly tedious, yes. Guilty of a crime against the sacred timeline. Absolutely not, you have the wrong person.
Oh, really? And who should we have?
I suspect the Avengers. You see, I only came into possession of the Tesseract because they traveled through time. No doubt in the last-ditch effort to stave off my...
So by the way, just a quick detail: Loki knows all about the Avengers plan. Now in Endgame, you're probably thinking that he was probably confused as heck, but I think over time he realized when he reached in Mongolia and when he got captured by the TVA that I think he only realized that now he only came into possession of it because the Avengers had messed him up through time. So yeah.
Sent to God King.
That's quite an accusation.
I believe you can smell the cologne to turn stuff. You speak of time criminals?
Also, what's also funny is that Loki's able to tell that. What's also kind of funny is that Loki's able to tell who that what's called. There's actually two Tony Starks because he's able to smell the cologne of two of them because he smells one from 2012 and he smells the one from Endgame coming to steal the Tesseract. So yeah.
It's they you should be after. Perhaps you could provide me with a task force and resources, and I could return and eliminate them for you.
We're not here to talk about the Avengers.
Oh no?
No. What they did was supposed to happen. You escaping was not.
Right. Not supposed to happen. According to whom?
The Timekeepers.
Oh, the timekeepers. Right. Well, perhaps I should speak to these timekeepers. Gods to gods.
I'm sorry, but they're quite busy
Oh, they are? What are they doing?
dictating the proper flow of time.
I see. Right, and then what do you do?
Dictate the proper flow of time according to their dictations. How do you plead?
Guilty. All this.
He tries to use his powers, but it literally fails because, like I said, the Infinity Stones don't really work, and Loki's powers are not linked to an Infinity Stone like Wanda's are from WandaVision, but Loki's powers do not really work out here because Loki knows how to use magic and stuff like that, and he's able to do stuff like basic stuff like summon knives out of. He's able to like pull knives out of his hands and stuff like that. He's also able to make illusions, but those don't really work because remember he's in like an alternate reality, so literally nothing works here.
What's going on?
Hang on. Everyone quiet.
He's trying to use his powers, ma'am.
Don't rush me. Damn it, why would it work?
Magic powers. They're no good in the TVA, Mr. Laufeyson. The court finds you guilty, and I sentence you to be reset. Next case, please.
So yeah, basically, Ravana, the judge, she basically sent him to go be reset, which basically she means he's about to be eliminated or terminated. So yeah, so that's horrible. But then, luckily for him, Mobius goes to save him. So yeah,
Reset. What does that mean? What is that? Is it bad? What does it mean? But you ridiculous bureaucrat will not dictate how my story ends.
It's not your story, Mr. Laufeyson. It never was.
You have no idea what I'm capable of. I think I might have an idea of what he's capable of.
Approach the bench.
Right.
If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, it's a bad idea.
Okay, I'm just chasing a hunch.
Anything goes sideways, it's on you.
Okay. I feel like I'm always looking up to you. Right. And who are you?
so basically, what ends up happening is Mobius is able to cause Loki from being reset or terminated. So yeah, so luckily he takes him to this room where they're basically supposed to watch Loki's entire life and stuff like that. And apparently, if you remember, there's that one scene in the trailer where it shows Loki dressing up as DB Cooper and he's jumping out of a plane full of cash. Now he explains what happened was that he was actually he actually lost a bet to Thor around the 1990s, so that was supposed to be his deal apparently. So yeah, I can show you the clip in 3, 2, 1, but yeah, so he's supposed to try to do that, but it was kind of funny. So yeah, because basically he lost that. But you have to remember though, Loki's like hundreds of years old, so he probably has like tons of stories he could try sharing. So yeah, so that Mobius claims that was his favorite moment. But yeah. So anyway, he watches moments like him being defeated by the Avengers, him stabbing Phil Coulson, but most importantly, he also shows him his mother's death, which is honestly really sad, and it actually takes Loki back a notch. So yeah, so what ends up happening is um if you don't know, Loki, Odin kind of spoiled Thor because Odin was a horrible father to Loki. Odin kind of discriminated Loki because he had Loki, because he treated Loki like a middle class citizen while he had Thor in the high class. When in reality, that's not how you're supposed to parent a bunch of kids. So yeah, especially when they know Loki's adopted. So that's why. So obviously in the first Thor movie, when Loki figures out that he's actually adopted, then that's gonna cause some issues with it. That's obviously not that's not gonna go well with him. So obviously, yeah, because he figured out because all he wanted in his entire life is to just prove that his dad that he's worthy of being king of Asgard. So yeah, apparently. So because now in the Thor movie, he realized that the reason why he'll never become king is just because he was born differently, which is honestly not right, and all faults on you, Odin. So yeah. So then eventually one of the Minutemen tells Mobius that there's been like something happened, an emergency happened. So obviously Loki uses this moment to escape, and because he uses to escape, he goes down and he tracks. He goes down. He threatens this poor dude right here, to give him and the Tesseract. But then he ends up showing him all these Infinity Stones, and you have big stones, you have little stones, you got everything. So yeah. So what's funny is that in Loki doesn't understand it fully, but uh in the universe, in the Marvel universe, there is no if Infinity Stones are powerful if in the certain Marvel universe, like if you're in your own timeline, then it's not it's powerful, but if you're not in your own timeline, then you're like the Infinity Stone's not as powerful basically. So it's like trying to get like basically it only works when you're in your own timeline, which is why whenever Loki tries to use his powers, his Infinity Stone, nothing, he can't do that. By the way, another reason why he was close to his mother is because his mother also treated him fairly instead of spoiling Thor like that. So also his mother taught him stuff like magic and other stuff. So that's actually where most of Loki's powers come from. So that's why he also feels very sad by her death. Also, he also leads. He also kind of before her death, he also talks really poorly about it, the way he should, because he says things like, "Oh, you're not my mother" and stuff like that in Thor: The Dark World and stuff. Basically, really offending Odin and his mother, and it's not really helpful because that's like the last time she sees her. So yeah, pretty much. So yeah, pretty much. So that's what ends up happening, and yeah. So then what ends up happening is the guard B-15 catches where he is, and she tries to use it. But of course, Loki has the device thing, so now he's able to escape as soon as she tries to hit him. As I actually took the screenshot really perfectly because right as the hunter's about to hit him, you can just see Loki's body disappearing. Perfect timing. So anyway, so then he resets the clock. He goes back there, and for some reason, I don't know what. You could have just stayed in the room the whole time, but you didn't. So anyway, so he sits back and he watches everything else go there. He watches really important moments, like for example, when Odin dies in Thor Ragnarok, he tells him stuff like he tells him like I've always loved you boys and stuff like that, and that's right before he dies. And then but the scariest thing about this is he shows him is for some reason Loki watches his death. So yeah, that's really horrible. But yeah, and Loki's really scared of that. So you can imagine now if Loki ever runs into Thanos, he's probably gonna like run away because the Loki from that timeline didn't know Thanos that well. But if you also remember, Loki knew Thanos kind of because remember in the reason why Loki was given the scepter in Avengers Endgame, which was a weapon that he used in Endgame or not in Endgame in the first Avengers movie. In the first Avengers movie, he used the scepter as like a weapon and stuff. He used it to fight against Thor's hammer 1-on-1. But what ended up happening is because of this, what ended up happening then, because what ended up happening then was that scepter was actually given to him by Thanos. And if you also didn't know, that scepter contained the Mind Stone, which is where Wanda and Pietro got their powers. But it's also where it's also where Vision got the Mind Stone from. So yeah, so Thanos is the one who gave it to him, and since he failed and he got sent back to Asgard, Thanos never saw Loki after that. So you can imagine now Loki's never gonna want to do anything for Thanos again, like cause specifically. So yeah, because he was supposed to his goal was that he was supposed to get the Tesseract. The reason why he was after the Tesseract was to give it to Thanos, and then the scepter would be his, and then he was able to rule Midgard. But yeah. So anyway, so as soon as Mobius comes back, he's basically hit rock bottom, and he's like in a moment to himself. He's depressed. He realized that in the future now he's gonna lose everybody. Eventually, he's gonna lose himself as well. Which the same thing happens for Thor. But yeah, so Mobius comes in, and he has an idea where he wants Loki to help him with his job, and pretty much what ends up happening is he says they want him to help him with his job, and this job is supposed to involve about Loki. So yeah.
Oh, several times. More minimal. I mean, the variant we're hunting is you.
So basically, Mobius explains that the person they're hunting is actually Loki, but it's a variant of Loki, another version of him, pretty much. So yeah. So what ends up happening is then the scene transfers to 1858 Oklahoma, and what ends up happening is some of the Minutemen come there because remember this is the same person where Mobius is where in France what ends up happening. This is what happens. So the Minutemen are killed by the same person who's also been killing the other Minutemen in 1549 in France. But yeah. So what ends up happening is they end up tracking this thing. And what's weird is that this is 1858. Where has technology like this ever existed? And back in those times, they were inventing stuff like cannons and like guns and stuff like that. Where do they have stuff like this in that period of time? So yeah. So basically what ends up happening is the variant is a hooded figure, which I already have my guesses who it is, and a lot of people already do, so I'll get that later though. So what ends up happening is she grabs this thing and she drops it. It basically has lots of fire and it spreads a giant fire across, and basically lots of the Minutemen die. But basically the main thing that the variant was after is that device that is used to reset the timeline. So I think she wants that, and I think Loki's gonna have to fight her 1-on-1 eventually. So yeah, because is her. It is himself, pretty much. By the way, I kind of revealed what I thought it was. I believe that this version of Loki is actually a female version of Loki. In the comics, there are many versions of Loki. There's the more cruel Loki, which is the one you have in the comics. There's a version of Loki as a child or like a kid version. There's also a version of Loki as a female called Lady Loki, and yeah, there's like tons of them. But yeah, mostly though, but yeah, there is versions. The main ones are mostly just Kid Loki and Lady Loki. Lady Loki's probably going to be the one here because she's going to be pretty much like Loki, but as a woman, obviously. But yeah, kind of. So yeah, she's gonna be a big threat to Loki, and she's probably a lot more crueler than he is. Also, one thing that you might want to notice is that the villains in Loki are gonna be a lot worse than like the villains that you have in Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision. Because remember, Loki himself is kind of a villain, so that means the villains that you want are for him are gonna have to be like worse than him. So pretty much. So obviously you can already tell because this variant of Loki means business. She be going around killing all the Minutemen using fire, grabbing their legs, whatever. It's just horrible. But yeah. So anyway, that's the end of the episode, and then that's the end of the episode. So please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below if you enjoyed the video. And I will try to get this next episode out next on Wednesday. So yeah, I will try to get that a lot faster. I don't think I'll be able to get it on Wednesday, but hopefully on Saturday or maybe even Friday. I think Friday or Saturday would have to be our latest. Sunday would have to be really late, but yeah. So anyway, and now here is another video you may watch on this side, and here is another video I may watch. Please subscribe.